to the Get Real podcast. I'm your host, Tamika Meeks. And today we're going to switch things up a bit. For the past couple weeks, we've been talking about relationships, talking about spirituality. But today we're going to talk about something more serious and actually something to me that needs to be talked about and should be being talked about. We're going to talk about workplace abuse. Now, when I first decided to do this video, I thought about calling it corporate abuse. But as I've learned over the past couple of weeks, abuse can happen at any level of a company, whether it's in the C-suites, senior management, regular management, at the employee level, at the manufacturing floor level, at the janitorial level. Abuse can happen at any level of a company. And so I decided to change the title from corporate abuse to just workplace abuse. And when we talk about abuse, we're talking about harassment. We're talking about discrimination, bullying, violence, and sexism. So when we talk about discrimination, we're talking about discriminatory behavior, and that treats workers unfairly on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, disability, and age. And so I know for a lot of people, going to work is a nightmare. It's a daily nightmare. Most of us work more than 40 hours a week. A lot of us spend a lot of our time working. And if you're in an abusive situation at the workplace, that's 40 hours of hell. That's 40 hours of misery. That's 40 hours that is slowly eating away at your mental health. And that's why I decided to do this video, because we don't talk about workplace abuse enough. And we don't talk about the discriminatory behaviors and actions that happen in the workplace. And so today we're going to talk about workplace abuse when it pertains to human resources and review companies like Glassdoor and other companies out there like those. Now, again, this is a big topic. And so I can do many videos on the different types of workplace abuse, but I'm going to try to keep this short in the interest of time. And I may do more videos talking about the different forms of workplace abuse, from harassment to discrimination to bullying to violence to sexism. Because in the years that I've been working, I've seen all of them. And that's sad. I have seen people become discriminated against based off their sexual orientation. I've seen employees get discriminated against based off their race, based off their age. And most of the time, nothing is done. Matter of fact, since I've been working, I've never seen anything happen. So let's get into our topic today, workplace abuse as it pertains to human resources. Now, at most companies, when you're hired on, you're going through the onboarding process, they try to make it out to seem like human resources is a resource for the employees. If something happens, report it to human resources. But the truth of the matter is, human resources is not for the employees. Human resources is there to protect the employer. Even if you go to human resources and report an incident, say you are being sexually harassed. So you go to human resources and say, hey, my boss is sexually harassing me. And human resources will tell you, hey, we're going to launch an investigation. But when they say investigation, all they really mean is we're going to go talk to your boss and ask him if he's sexually harassing you. And of course, nobody in their right mind is going to say yes. Your boss is not going to be like, oh yeah, I sexually harass Susan at every turn. Because he knows that would be his job. And they may ask other employees, have they seen any instances of where he's sexually harassing you? But let's be real about this. When it comes to discrimination, whether it's based off sexual orientation, sexual harassment, race, age, most of the time it's done in a one-on-one setting. The perpetrator of this abuse is not going to do it openly to where other people are going to see it. So then it becomes your word against that person's word. And if human resources can't find any evidence that this person is sexually harassing you, then nothing is going to be done. And you're now going to have to not only deal with the fact that this person was sexually harassing you, you're going to have to deal with the fact that now this person knows that you've reported them. And as an employee, that just puts you in a bad situation. Although you were in a bad situation to begin with. And even if there are multiple claims of sexual harassment against this person, if no evidence is found, nothing happens. So what is the purpose of human resources if it is not to protect the employees? I'm going to tell you about a personal incident that happened in my life. In 2011, I was hired on at the General Motors Fairfax plant. Yes, I'm telling you the name of the employer, the General Motors Fairfax plant. There were three of us, all black people. It was a young lady, a young man, and then me. I was the oldest of all three. The other two were just kind of fresh out of college. I had just gotten my MBA at the time. Two of them were engineers. I was in finance. I was at General Motors for 3 years. And over that course of 3 years, all three of us were fired for underperforming. Now, the first year, it was the black lady. She had graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering. And within her first year, General Motors claimed that she was underperforming. Think about that for a second. Now, I'm not saying that it couldn't have been true. I'm just saying, think about it. Then the first year, the black male, he was given great reviews. But then the second year, he started underperforming. And then the third year, I came under scrutiny, and then I was underperforming. And the sad part about it is some of the older white workers who had been there, they said this was nothing new. They had been seeing this for years. As General Motors Fairfax plant would bring in this young talent, and then somehow these people would be underperforming and then would lose their jobs. And they said they had seen this cycle for years. For years. Now, of course, this did not happen to our Caucasian counterparts. It was more of those of a minority setting. And it made me wonder why HR hadn't stepped in. Why HR was not looking at the statistics of who was being let go when it came to race, age, whether it's age discrimination or gender. I mean, when you apply to a company, the first thing they ask you is whether you get the job or not. What's your race or ethnicity? Companies know who they let go. They know the age, and they know the race, and they know your gender. And so why companies don't act on that information, I don't know. I don't know why companies don't act on when you see you have a high turnover rate when it comes to your minority employees. I don't see why companies don't act on when you see a high turnover rate in specific divisions, departments, or manufacturing facilities. They have the information and they see it, but yet they choose to do nothing about it until some tragedy happens. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, how could this happen? They didn't know about it. Are you flipping serious? Are you serious? And that's why when I see stuff on TV where they were talking about people go in and shoot up these facilities, and then you see a company's PR team on there talking about, well, we just had no idea about this. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. HR people have eyes and ears like everybody else. Companies know when they have a high turnover rate when it comes to minority employees, or when it comes to employees of a certain gender, or when it comes to employees of a certain age group. Y'all have this knowledge at y'all fingertips. Y'all choose to do nothing about it because honestly, it doesn't pertain to y'all. Most times when company violence happens, it doesn't happen at the corporate level. It doesn't happen at the C-suite level. It happens on the manufacturing floor. It happens where regular everyday employees are involved. But yet, it's these decision makers who see this crap and who choose to do nothing about it. They don't launch investigations into why they have a high turnover rate with their minority employees. They don't launch investigation as to why if an employee is hired within the first year, they normally leave within the first 1 to 3 years based off underperforming, that they've been put on a performance improvement plan. Why is that? And then you got those worst companies who every year they have to find an employee to put on a performance improvement plan. It's part of their review process. And to me, that's a toxic culture out the gate. But again, HR condones these things. HR knows about them, and they knows it's detrimental to the health of the employees. They just don't do anything about it. I worked at a company that sent out a yearly survey. They wanted to hear from the employees. Why? You know what's going on. You just want the employees to confirm what you already know. And then even when employees call out managers that are toxic, nothing is ever done about it. And yet they expect employees to be honest. If you're in a group of 5 people, you're not going to be honest about your manager because through the process of elimination, the manager can figure out who said what. because those results are shared with the manager. So again, you're putting employees in a bad position. And yet, companies simply don't care. They simply don't care. And that's what this all boils down to. That's what workplace abuse boils down to. Companies do not care until something tragic happens. And then all of us should, oh, how did this happen? How did this happen? We didn't see this coming. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. The point of the matter is, you just didn't care. And you didn't act on the information that was right in front of your face. There's as much analytical data in HR as there is anywhere else. Or why else would you ask employees for their age, their ethnicity, their race, if you weren't going to do anything with that information? Oh, is that just for affirmative action purposes? That's stupid. But again, it's companies just don't care. As much as they have these mission statements and these moral codes that are all about the employees, at the end of the day, most companies don't live up to that in no shape, form, or fashion. Even though y'all have all of these diversity and inclusion officers, what about the company culture changes? Think about that. Because a diversity and inclusion officer doesn't change anything for the janitorial staff, doesn't change anything for those on the manufacturing floor who are in abusive situations, who are in toxic cultures. So that's enough about HR. Let's move on to the other perpetrator in this. Review websites or review companies like Glassdoor who really serve no purpose whatsoever. So I have left a review on Glassdoor because they had blocked me from reading reviews because they said I wasn't a contributor to the website. So basically to them, we're not going to give you information if you don't contribute information. Why do you need me to contribute anything? Y'all don't ask the right questions because y'all don't want the right answers. I've always wondered why Glassdoor asks people whether or not you do or do not approve of the CEO. How many people, regular Joe people, come in contact with the CEO? Why don't they ask employees about the culture, the workplace, the management staff? Why don't Glassdoor and others like them ask the right questions so they can get the right answers? Basically, they ask you whether or not your approval rating of the CEO and the pros and cons of working for this employer. And that's supposed to be your review. You don't ask about the culture. You don't ask if there were any instances where the employee might have seen some form of discrimination, or if it's a toxic workplace. And if you consider the toxic workplace, why? Now, I'm not going to lie. I used to be an employee that when I was going to start a new employer, I would go to Glassdoor and try to get information. But I found most of the information to be irrelevant. And it didn't help me make an informed decision about whether or not I wanted to work for that employer. Because let's face it, anytime someone posts a review, Glassdoor shared that information with the employer. And I'm sure the employers have some way of fighting bad reviews. Never once have I seen on Glassdoor where an employee brought up discrimination, sexual harassment, age discrimination, racial discrimination. But that really doesn't fall under the pros and cons of working for somebody. That doesn't address their culture. I've never seen someone put on there, well, the con of working for this employer is they have managers who like to sexually harass the female employees. But that could be part of their culture. It could be part of their workplace. We had a local company here in Kansas City, Boulevard Brewery, that just got hit with a sexual harassment lawsuit. Well, not a lawsuit, but they got hit with sexual harassment charges. But those charges didn't come from someplace like Glassdoor where the female employees were going in there leaving reviews about the company. It was a woman who went on Reddit and put her story out there. And it was Reddit that brought the story to light. So it was a social media site who brought these allegations out. Not companies like Glassdoor, who are supposed to be the reliable source for this type of information. Because you know why? They don't ask the right questions to get the right answers. The pros and cons of working for an employer does not ask you whether or not they have a toxic culture. It does not ask you whether or not they have a discriminatory culture. It doesn't ask you whether or not you have seen discrimination in the workplace. So of course, you're not going to bring these things up if someone doesn't ask you about them. So then what's the point of Glassdoor and companies out there like Glassdoor? If I can't trust the information on your website to help me make an informed decision about whether or not I want to work in this workplace, why am I even going to you? And that's the whole reason I've never left, aside for that one time, leaving my one review on Glassdoor, because Glassdoor doesn't ask the right questions to get the right answers. And it doesn't give employees the information they need to know. If I was a female employee who had got hired on at Boulevard Brewery, I would want to know that they have a culture of discrimination against women, of sexually harassing women. But again, you don't get that information from sites like Glassdoor and review sites like those, because they don't ask the right questions, because they really don't want to know. They want to know if companies have a good work-life balance. They want to know if companies offer upward mobility. Those are all cute. But if I'm getting sexually harassed every day, I really don't care about upward mobility. I don't really care about work-life balance. If someone is treating me in a poor manner because of my gender, or because of my race, or because of my sexual orientation, work-life balance kind of goes out the window at that point. And I think as employees, we should demand better. We should demand better from our human resources departments, and we should demand better from these review sites who claim to be trustworthy and really are not. They should be independent of the employer. The employer should not be able to go in and review what past employees said. Employees should feel comfortable enough to put their story out there, however horrible it may be. If they felt discriminated against, they should be able to say they felt discriminated against. Because most employers, I would say, even 4- and 5-star employees have pockets of toxic cultures. There's some form of discrimination going on. Now, it may not be company-wide, but most companies have small pockets of toxic cultures. Finance being one of them. Accounting and finance normally really is a toxic work culture. Now, I'm a finance professional myself, and that's the reason I say that. And companies do nothing to address these things. They do nothing to address these small pockets of toxic culture. Even if they are a 4- and 5-star review company, I'm almost willing to bet that you can find some form of discrimination, sexual harassment, bullying. They have some form of discrimination going on. And again, it may be isolated incidents. It may be a particular manager who is doing these things. So that doesn't represent the whole company. But again, it shouldn't happen in any shape, form, or fashion, and companies need to work harder to eradicate these things. Whether or not you find evidence or not, if you're getting continuous complaints of a certain manager sexually harassing women, whether or not you find evidence or not, it's time to take action to protect your female employees. Even if that means moving him to another department, even if that means moving him to where he does not have female employees. But again, if employers don't find evidence of these things, then nothing normally happens. And these women are subjected to this every day. Or if it's on race, then the minorities are subjected to this every day. And this needs to change, and it needs to be addressed, and addressed quickly. And diversity and inclusion officers are not going to address this. The employees, we need to address it. In every company and on every level of the company does this need to be addressed. These are my thoughts on this whole situation. If you have thoughts, feelings on it, please feel free to leave a comment. I'm Tanika Meeks. This is the Get Real podcast. New content will be posted every Saturday. Word of mouth is still the best form of advertising. So if you like the videos or the podcast, please tell another person about them.